Hey, what's up everybody? In this video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to assemble the Automata project using Onshape with the parts that you've already created. So the first thing we're going to have to do is create a new assembly in Onshape. All right, once we have created that assembly, now we can go ahead and begin inserting our parts. So let's just come out here and do an insert. I'm going to go ahead and just start with the bottom piece first. I'm just going to pick it to place it and green check it. All right, so taking a look here, this is indicating that this is my front view, so this is obviously in the wrong orientation. So I'm going to pick it. We can see that the triad comes up. I can now use the bubble on this side. I can go ahead and rotate this. I'm going to go ahead and just rotate that 90 degrees. So that's been rotated 90. We can still see this is able to move. So we have to right click on it and fix it. So now we can see that this is anchored and we are ready to go. So our bottom is in there. Now let's go ahead and let's just insert in two sides. So let's find our sides. I'm just going to apologize. My sides are going to have this sort of protractor looking thing to it. Just ignore that. Your sides are just going to be standard, but it's going to work just fine for me. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick on these, use the triad again. I'm just going to slide this over, okay, where that's approximately 90 degrees, just like so. And the same thing here, using that bubble on the triad. And I'm just going to go ahead and just move this over. So, yep, you can see those protractors. It's going to have no impact on your design. So we're just kind of getting those in and using them. Okay, so our sides are in. So now what we need to do is begin fastenings. We're going to fasten the sides to the bottom. So we're going to come up here, pick on fasten. I'm going to orbit this over. I'm going to look at this side. And I have to kind of start thinking here, like what joint origins do we want to match up with other joint origins? So I'm going to come into this face, make sure that these joint origins are laying flat, and I'm going to be picking on this joint origin right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on that, flip this around, come here to the top part of my bottom, and make sure it's laying flat, and I'm going to pick on it where it places it right there. I can see that that's exactly in the orientation I want to be, so I'm going to go ahead and green check it. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the other side. I'm going to come out here, go to Fasten Mate, and I'm going to come in here, make sure it's laying flat. I'm going to take it right here to this origin point right here, flip this around, look at the top of my bottom side, make sure it's laying flat. I'm going to go ahead and pick it, and we can see that is in the correct orientation, so I'm just going to green check it. Okay, so my sides are in. If I try grabbing them, we can see that those are fully constrained, so we're good to go. I'm now going to go ahead and use Insert. I'm going to come out here now and find my top portion, pick and drop that in. And now I'm going to go ahead and get this into its correct location. So using Mate once again, okay, I'm going to come here to this face, make sure it's laying flat. I'm going to find that origin, pick on it, and now I'm going to bring that over here, make sure that this is laying flat, and I'm going to be picking on that origin right there. Okay, so we can see that this is overlapping. There's an intersect, so just don't forget you always have the flip-flop. Send that right up to where you need to be, and you can green check it. So that is in the correct orientation. My top is on. Once again, if I try grabbing this, nothing is going to happen because it is fully constrained. Okay, so let's now go out to insert. Let's find our back piece. Let's go ahead and drop that in, green check it. And now I'm going to go ahead and look at this from the back orientation. Okay. Using my Fasten Mate, come up here, make sure it's lying flat. Come here, pick on this origin right here. I'm going to go ahead and just orbit this over just slightly, come in, and I'm going to make sure that this is laying flat and it's going to be on this origin right here. Okay, we can see that everything is exactly where it needs to be. Nothing is overlapping, so I'm going to green check it, okay, and get out of that. All right. All right, so we can see that our box is assembled. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, I don't know, let's just go out here. Let's insert in our rod guides. Let's find those rod guides. There's one, drop that in. Rod guide number 2, I'm going to go ahead and drop that in. Okay, and so obviously these need to be pointing down. So using the bubble on the triad, I'm going to go ahead and just send these straight down, just like so. Same thing on the other one. You don't have to do this because you always have the flips and all your options within the actual mate itself, but I just always like to kind of do that. All right, so we want to mate these in place. So coming here to our Fasten Mate, I'm going to come here to the top of this, looking at this face, and be making sure that this joint origin is laying flat directly in the center. I'm going to pick it, and now I'm going to come over here to this hole, find that same exact location. It's laying flat. I'm going to go ahead and pick it, and that rod guide goes in. It's in the correct orientation, so I'm going to green check it. Same thing for this one. Come right here to the center, find the origin, make sure it's laying flat. And now take this right here to the center. I'm going to go ahead and just drop that in, green check it. And now both of my rod guides are exactly where they need to be. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and focus in on my axle. So I'm going to drop my axle in, just like so. But this time, instead of this being a fasten, remember your axle has to actually rotate. So that's going to be a revolute. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and find my revolute mate. Come here to the end. I'm going to pick on it. It's laying flat right on the face. And now I'm going to just bring this around to the other side, come right here to the top of the hole. That's laying flat. I'm going to go ahead and pick it, and that's going to place it exactly where it needs to be. The problem is we have a shaft collar on this side. The shaft collar is cut to the thickness of the plywood, so that means the shaft collar thickness is 0.1875, so I need to offset this axle out. So I'm going to pick on axle, and in my case I can see that my positive Z is coming out just like so. So I can come in here and go to my Z, and I can offset this out and just bring this 0.1875 like so. I'm going to hit enter, and now we can see that just barely sticking out. Okay, it's going to be about 3/16 of an inch. Okay, that's in its correct location, so I'm going to go ahead and green check it. All right, so my axle is there. Now I need to bring in my shaft collars. So I'm going to go to insert, come down here and find my shaft collar. I'm going to need 2 of these. So go ahead and drop in 2 of those just like so. All right, so we're no longer talking about revolute because the shaft collar is actually going to be glued to the actual axle itself. So we're going to be using a Fasten Mate. So coming up here, going to Fasten Mate, I'm going to pick on it. Come here to this flat face right here. Make sure that the origin is flat on that face. Come right here to the center and pick it. Now I'm going to come right up here to this guy. The origin's right top of the face itself. I'm going to pick it. We can see that that obviously is not in the right orientation. But if we do the flip, it's now going to be matching up with the actual side of that box. So I'm going to green check it. Okay, and now that shaft collar is done. Okay, I'm going to come over here and do the exact same thing for the other side. Come up here to Fasten Mate. Come in here and find my flat origin right here on top of the surface. And now I'm going to be coming in here, and just to stay away from that box, I'm going to go ahead and just pick right here on this guy. We can see that is flush with the top. If it's not, you can do the flip. You can make it right. And now we can see that this needs to come in 0.1875 thickness of the plywood because we need to account for the crank handle. So I'm going to go to offset. Right, we can see that my Z orientation positive is going in this direction. So I'm going to be typing in 0.1875. I'm going to hit enter, and now we can see how that just scoots it right in. So if I look at this from the front view, we can see it's right up there against the box. I'm going to go ahead and just green check it. Okay, so our shaft collar is in. Now we can go ahead and insert in our crank handle. Okay, let's drop that in, green check it. And once again, this needs to be fastened. This is no longer revolute because the axle is doing the revolute stuff. So everything is going to be fastened to the axle. So I'm going to say Fasten Mate. Come right here to the top of this hole. Make sure that origin is laying flat. I'm going to take that. I'm just going to place it right here on that face. We can see it's in the right orientation. Once again, if it's not, you can always do the flip. Now, in this case, if you don't want your crank handle going straight up, you can always do the reorient on the axis. Okay, you can get it where you want, but in our case, it really doesn't matter. So we can just green check it. All right, so let's just go ahead. Let's just see what we have so far. All right, let's come back over here, find our revolute. Let's right click on it, and let's go ahead and let's animate that. I don't want this to be reciprocate. I want to send this into a loop. I want it to be a full 360. I'm going to zoom right in here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button, and we can see that that crank handle is moving. Since there's no way for us to really tell if this is moving or not, we don't have wood grain or anything on it. It's just an assumption right now that everything is moving the way it should. Okay, so I'm done with that. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, close out of this dialog box, and now my crank handle's there and ready to go. Since we have our crank handle in, let's go ahead and go to Insert, and we can find our crank handle peg. Let's just go ahead and drop that in. Okay, this is also going to be glued to the actual crank handle, so that's going to be a Fasten Mate. Okay, I'm going to come in here, right here to the top of this surface. I'm going to find that mate, flip this around just a little bit. I'm going to see if I can't find that origin. It's at the very bottom of the hole. So I'm going to go ahead and pick it. Now, if it goes into that orientation like you've been seeing, we can always do the flip. Okay, send this back out in the other direction. Oops, I didn't get it. There we go. Got it. I was in the wrong dialog box. Okay, so now that crank handle peg is in its exact orientation. We can green check that. Okay, and we're good to go, okay, with the crank handle. All right, so now's the time when I can begin bringing in my cams. So in my case, it doesn't have to be these two. Obviously, this is your own design. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and say I want to insert. In my case, I'm going to say eccentric cam. And I'm also going to go ahead and bring in a pair cam. Okay, so we have those where they need to be. All right, so our cams are going to be glued, okay, to our axles. So we're going to be once again using Fasten Mate. So coming up here, going to fasten, I'm going to come into the top of this hole. Okay, make sure it's lying flat. I'm going to pick on it. I'm going to flip this around, and now I'm going to be finding, okay, the top surface of our axle on this side. I'm going to pick it. Okay, so we can see that's not in the right orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and do the flip. Okay, and so that's now in the right orientation, but the problem is it's not lined up directly underneath our rod guide. So now I can start playing with the offset. Okay, so I'm not seeing my axis. I'm going to close out of this just for a second. I'm going to bring that back. Let's do that again. Mate, or Fasten Mate. I'm going to come here to the origin. I'm going to come right here to the top of the face, find that origin. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the flip. And now this is a positive z-axis in this direction. So when I flip it to the front face, okay, now I can come in here to my offset and go to my z, and I can put in a negative number. Okay, so I can see that that's gone over 1 inch. Obviously, it's not directly underneath it, so I'm going to say I want that to be -2. Obviously, way too far. So now we can just start, playing around with this a little bit. So -1.35 might be a little bit far yet. Let's go -1.33. And that's looking pretty good. That's almost directly underneath it. So I'm going to go ahead and green check it. Okay. Now, the one thing I forgot to tell you as I jumped out of that so quick is that if you don't want the orientation of your eccentric cam going straight down, remember, you can always go out here and reorient this. Okay. You can send those to 90 degrees. Okay, it's totally whatever you want to make it. So in my case, I'm going to say I want that to be straight up and down, or the top lobe be going straight up. So I'm going to green check that. And then let's just see how this is working. So let's go back to Revolute. Let's go ahead and animate this. Let's go into a full loop, 360 degrees. Let's go ahead and hit the play button. And now we can see that cam is attached to that axle, and we're cranking it. All right, and it's doing a Revolute thing. It's looking good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and escape out of that. And now I'm going to go ahead and start focusing on my pair cam. So once again, this is going to be glued to the axle. So we're using a Fasten Mate. Okay, I'm going to come right here to the top of the surface, find that origin. I'm going to take it right here to the top of this surface and find that origin. It's in the correct orientation, so coming here to my front view, okay, I can see my positive Z is sticking out, so I want that to go into my negative Z direction. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, go to offset. I'm going to say I want this to be like -1.5. Let's see where that puts it. Looks like we're not quite far enough, so I'm going to go -1.6. Let's see what that does. Maybe a little bit too far. Let's try 1.55. Yep, looks like it's pretty much close, right, being dead center, so I'm going to green check it. Okay, and once again, just to make sure this is working, come to Revolute. I'm going to animate this, go into my loop, and hit the play button. All right, so we can see that our eccentric cam and pair cam are animating exactly the way that they want, but in my design, maybe I want the pair cam to be going straight down as the eccentric is going straight up. Okay, pretty simple. We can come back into our Fasten Mate and say Edit, and now we can go ahead and start spinning that along the correct axis, green check it, okay, and now it's pointing down as this is pointing up. Okay, so we have both of our cams in. Now we're missing some follower rods. So let's go to Insert, find our follower rods, and we're going to need 2 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and drop those in, green check it. So our follower rods are going to be sliding up and down, okay, within those rod guides. So I'm going to come up here and find my slider mate. Come right here to the surface, make sure that's flat, right on top of the face, and I'm going to take that right here to the top of our rod guide and make sure that that is flat. So there we go. Okay, so we can see that that's sticking right inside the rod guide. Everything's in the correct orientation. So I'm going to go ahead and green check it. I'm going to do the same exact thing for the other one. Go back into slider. Okay, pick the top surface of this. Come here to the top of our rod guide. Make sure it's in the right orientation. That's in the correct orientation, so I hit the green check and I close out. All right, so right now our follow rods are going right down through the rod guides into the cam, through the axle. Obviously that's not correct. All right, to make things a little bit easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the follow rods, I'm going to pull these way above the box. Okay, just like so. So at the bottom of our follower rods, we have our rod followers. All right. So everybody thinks you have to kind of, create these like you would in real life. Absolutely not. So we don't have the space inside the box. Let's just go ahead and just assemble this outside the box, and then we can push them down, and it will go right through the actual top of the box and the rod guide. So in order to do this, I'm going to need my rod followers. So here's one rod follower. I'm going to drop that in, and my second one, I'm going to go ahead and drop that in and green check it. Okay. So we need to glue our rod followers to the bottom of our follower rods. In order to do that, we're going to come up here to Fasten Mate. I'm going to peek into the square hole, look at the base of this, find that origin, pick it, and now I'm going to go ahead and orbit out, flip around, come right here to this face right here, pick it, okay, and I'm going to be making sure that that rod is actually sticking down in it, and it is, so I can green check it. All right, I'm still unfastened, so I can come over here, go to the bottom of that square hole, pick it, orbit this around, look at the bottom of our follower rod, make sure it's the right orientation on the origin, pick it, and I can see that rod is going right down into that. So I'm going to go ahead and green check that. All right, so we have our follower rods with our rod followers at the bottom of them. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just grab a hold of this, pull this straight down. Just it goes right down through it. Remember, this isn't real life, so we can do this. Just makes things a little bit easier. Okay, just like so. So we can see this is actually making contact with the cam. I'm just going to pull this up slightly, just where there's a little bit of a gap. Okay, so I want there to be a tangent connection between our cam and the actual rod follower. So if you look up here, we have our tangent mate. All we have to do is pick on the sphere and then pick on the actual face, okay, of the cam. Now, if it does this, no problem. We can always do the flip-flop, and now we can see that connection is there. So let's just go ahead and green check it. Okay, same thing for the other side. Come up here, use tangent, grab the ball, grab the face of the actual paracam. It's behaving the way it should, so we don't have to do the flip. So let's just green check it. All right, and there you go. That is how we assemble that. All right, let's just go ahead and just try animating this. Let's go to Revolute, and let's go to Animate, and let's just go into our full loop, the full 360, and hit the play button, and let's see if this behaves the way it's supposed to. All right, so we can see our rod followers are making connection with the face of both of those cams. It's behaving the way it's supposed to. And if we look at the tops of the followers, okay, they are behaving the way that they should. So there you go. That is how we assemble the Automata in Onshape, and that's how we animate that to make it look the way it should. So there you go. Good luck, and have fun with Automata.